hello everybody. Welcome to Talk the Walk, Boss Rush Podcast, or Boss Rush Games, I should say, walking simulation discussion show. Kind of our new book club thing that we are doing, because we have got a lot of feedback about us when we talked about what remains of Edith Finch, and we just came together. We kept talking about walking simulators, and it was just like, we should name a show. And so, we played around with Walk the Talk. I'm like, no, let's call it Talk the Walk, because that's what we are. We're talking about walking simulators. And this month, we are playing maybe the birth of walking simulators, or even the term of walking simulators, Gone Home by the Fulbright Company. You guys can find this on PC, PlayStation, Xbox One, and on Nintendo Switch and iOS. And I believe Android also.
And that's pretty accurate. There were definitely ones before this one, but I recall this one being like the main one that I think not exactly mainstream, because I mean, these games, even the real gems of them, they're not plastered all over the place like some of the bigger titles. But this is definitely one of the first ones that people that I know weren't into walking simulators or really didn't know about them. This is one of the first ones I heard them starting to talk about.
Yeah, I remember when it came out and people were just like, it's such a different kind of genre that we're experiencing. And then some people complained about the price of $15 or it was $19.99. But people will say that Journey kind of started off, but Journey is more of like a third person walking simulator in a sense, where this one is first person and you are in the view of our main character. So where should we start? Because this game, we're going to have a lot of opinions about this, because this game, I definitely got it on Xbox Live Go for free. And I have thoughts, but Celeste, before we even get into that, I'm sorry I didn't introduce my guest.
They know who we are by now, maybe.
That's it.
Joining me is the Celestial Breast herself, Mr. Celeste Roberts.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is the first walking simulator I've ever played. I played it in 2019 because it was free on PlayStation Network, and my little godson, who was 8 at the time, was spending the night, and he was just going through the library, and my boyfriend noticed they started talking about girls kissing and didn't feel like having that conversation with my godson, so he said, let's play Spider-Man. We'll wait till you're a little older to let you play this. But then I picked it up the next day, and I had never played anything like Gone Home, and that's what started my love for this genre.
Yes. And joining us from Retrovaniacs is Billy Holiday. Welcome back,
Hello
good
there.
Sir.
It's good to be back. After that first one, I thought it felt good. I was like, well, I'll have to see if they invite me back. That'll be the real test. So I'm glad to see I'm back. But yeah, this is one I was already kind of hot and heavy on these this genre, but there wasn't a lot. I had played, Dear Esther, a couple of other ones here and there. So I was really happy, and this is a really important one, because this, like you were hinting at the beginning, a lot of people kind of consider this to be the big jumping off point to where this became more of a kind of accessible genre, both in that they started putting out more titles, and both that they started coming to console. Because before that, it was a PC only type thing. But this one, they dropped it on PlayStation, Xbox. If you have something that plays video games, you can probably get this one at this point, including on the phone, which, and I'm one of those that I love this one so much. And it's like Edith Finch. If it's on something, I'll pick it up. I don't know why. I really don't. But I am saddled. I am saddled with the iOS version of this also, which, if that's the only way you got to play it, but I certainly wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, this was, I think, a significant title. Maybe not because a lot of significant things happen in the story, but just because of what it kind of meant for walking simulators in general. And it was a big.
Oh, sorry, Skype froze. It's the video Skype. Well, everybody, we're going to jump into it because your main character is Katie Greenbeer. She's coming from across, from Europe, and when she gets in, she noticed that the house is empty. And if you actually look at the intro, like the title, you see the house is kind of without no lights, but there's one light on on the thing. But when you actually start the game, you find out the door is locked, but you remember that there is a spare key because somehow they have a drawer with a duck inside of it. And I'm like, wait, what?
Good old Christmas duck.
Christmas duck, that's right.
You get the key and you go into the house. And once you get into the house, you are free to explore some parts of the house, but not all of it. So
yeah, and the art for it makes it look very creepy. The music playing, like Ed was saying, the drawing of the game, the icon for the game. You're thinking, is this going to be a horror game? How are they setting me up? It's a dark and stormy night.
Oh, they certainly. I will say this is the best horror game where nothing horrible ever occurs. It has everything. If you grew up watching the films, it has every trope. You're a young lady alone in a big house. Everybody's missing. It's a dark, stormy night. Parts of the house are mysteriously locked up. You're having to travel through. And I think they really play with that. They definitely know it's not one of those unintentional horror games where you have to look really far into it and kind of draw straws to come up with it. They knew what they were doing, and this game does a tremendous job setting up a great atmosphere throughout. Speaking of Christmas duck on Xbox or PlayStation, did anybody pick up that achievement or that trophy for the Christmas duck?
I did. This is my second playthrough because I read about it and I was really disappointed in myself for not bringing Christmas duck home.
Yes. Maybe that's what the Gone Home is all about. Christmas duck's journey to his nest from the front porch.
Not to spoil it for anybody listening who hasn't played the game, but there's a place where you can put Christmas duck.
Yes, there's a place very late in the game, and essentially, you have to take him from the very beginning to this spot at the end, which I thought was amusing. And it's and it goes to show that there are so many little details throughout this game.
Yes.
And really, this is a unique one. Edith Finch was to an extent, but I feel like they told you more. This one, there is a lot of story here to unpack. There are several different stories here, but it's just a matter of how much you want to explore. Because I know people that have played through this and they know, which I'm sure it's going to be spoiled thoroughly throughout this thing. So if you haven't played it, come back to us in a minute. It only takes a couple hours. Take a couple hours of play and come back to us.
Or it may take a minute.
But it could take a minute. It could take a literal minute.
It could take a minute, in which case this is still going to spoil you pretty heavy, those. But this is one of those, and it's really unique depending on the amount of time that you put into it. You could follow 2 or 3 different stories throughout that you would miss completely otherwise if you were just focused on going from one kind of objective to the next. So I love the way that was laid out.
Yes. So you come home to empty house, like we said, and it kind of the story revolves around Sam, who is her sister, the main character's sister, and then you have her dad Richard and her mom Terrence. Richard is the dad. Richard is Terrence's dad. And you got the mom, Valerie, I believe. That's Janice. Why did I think it was Valerie? Oh, sorry, everybody. And it kind of revolves around another character named Oscar. That there are some things with Oscar, and he is a hint that he's hunting the house, but it's not sure with the music and sound effects and stuff. And definitely it's weird because when you're in the house, it starts thundering and raining and stuff.
Yeah.
So you, like you said, Billy, you get the spooky atmosphere, but you really are just searching the house, trying to figure out why nobody is home, and you kind of hear the narrative through Sam's voice, telling you what's been going on, and you got to put the pieces out for it. What's cool about this game is that when you go places, if you highlight something, if you're playing the Xbox One version, you hear the right trigger and you'll pick up stuff, and then you can examine it, look at it, or put it down, and you pretty much do that throughout the house. And the linear part comes from when you pick up certain items and you hear Sam telling what is going on, but the plot, if you want to call it, kind of thickens because there's some things that deal with love, some things that deals with finding out stuff about the characters and about themselves and stuff. So I want to do Sam last. I kind of want to get into Terrence, the dad, because he is a character that we see this picture and we know that he's an author. He used to review electronic stuff, but he also has been writing books. And he kind of gone through a rejection time. Yeah. But there are other stuff that is happening to him. So I want to get your guys' opinion. What did you think of how the Fulbright Company wrote Terrence, how they portrayed him?
I think Terrence is definitely the one, if you really dig throughout the game, has a pretty good arc to it. But it's all, they're not going to give of it. It's like you're saying, the only story you'll get, which we'll get to later, is Sam. Sam is the only story that is put upon you as you play through. With Terrence, you know, kind of your original hints are you'll find tons of copies of his books laying around. So you get down, okay, as an author, you know, he's got books that look like they've been published. So you're thinking, okay, this may be a big house. I want the damn houses these people have in these games. That Edith Finch house, this house, man. These are some nice houses, but so you're like, all right, big house. You know, he's got these published books. Must be a successful writer. And then as you go through, you will see, yeah, like I was talking about, there are kind of, I don't know if he started off pretty hot to begin with, but there are, you know, rejection letters. Obviously, the series he's working on. Is not, which involve, you know, going back to the time traveler, you know, going to 1963 to prevent JFK assassination. You know, you'll find that his other entries, I guess, aren't doing so well. He's starting to get rejected. I think he gets dropped from his company. And at the time we find him, he is sort of, and I imagine it's a huge blow, probably. Ego-wise, to go from being a published author to, you know, this company kind of throws him a pity job of, you know, writing reviews for, you know, electronics and things like that. So that's obviously a big drop career-wise he's going through. But you also find that he has inherited this house from Oscar. And I don't know how long they've been in it, because it's still, the thing looks like it's, you know, maybe a quarter lived in. There's still boxes absolutely everywhere.
So it seems that it's supposed to be, I think, 9 months to a year, because there are parts that says like 1994. And so if they got that from 1994, you kind of figure like, okay, what's going on? Because it is 1995. I'm like, this is about a year or so. So I'm thinking like 9 months, because I even put in our chat to Celeste. I'm like, why is there still boxes in this house? What happened? They unpacked the stuff. Yeah. It is funny that you mentioned Edith Finch house, because it's just like the thing with Edith Finch is, okay, it had all of these rooms and stuff built to it. And my thing was, there are too many books everywhere. And then this one is just like, there are books, but I'm like, y'all still are unfinished. And second of all, people clean your houses. Like, what is going on? What is with these? Well, I haven't played Firewatch yet. But it's just like, why is it just like areas that look like they didn't do no cleaning? Like, you come to a house, it's messy. Just like, what's going on?
Yeah, and I thought about that the the lack of unpacking, but I think it might make sense as you play through and discover more that this family had a lot going on. I think everyone individually had a lot on their plate, so I'm thinking maybe that's a direction they were going in to kind of show that the family is having trouble kind of moving forward. Maybe I think maybe that's a little symbolism. House full of unpacked boxes. They're having trouble kind of progressing along. And we find out that there are a lot more things. We'll go into it, and a lot of them involve Oscar, the perhaps ghost of the house. When it comes to Terrence, it takes you down some dark roads, which we'll discuss. But to Terrence, he's writing these reviews, but he's putting a little bit more into them. Like, he's putting a lot of like personal anecdotes and stories into it. So those aren't really quite what they want either. You can tell that he's a very creative person, and he's kind of stifled with something as simple as just, it's very mechanical, just writing reviews for things. So maybe he's really not express himself like that. And you get the feeling that he, and we'll talk more about it, that he is maybe going through a bit of a crisis, and feelings, a lot of repressed emotions, possibly, as we'll discuss, from being back in this.
Oh no!
It cut you out a little bit, Billy.
Oh,
it's okay. We just what you were saying? Being back in the house will do what?
Oh, that was the end for me. I wrapped it up. I said that
it did it at perfect time.
It ended perfect time. But yeah, I just think that and you'll find more as you explore through that why being in this house might weigh on him a little bit emotionally.
Celeste, what are your thoughts about Terrence?
Terrence, I feel really bad for him, as we will go through later. And I want to say, the first time I played this game, what we're going to talk about that likely happened to him did not occur to me the first time. So I feel bad for him because he also feels like he's a shadow to his father. His father was an English professor. He has a PhD. He's a prolific researcher. You can find a copy of his book, Exploring James Joyce. There's a portrait of his father in the basement with the face torn out. So you're wondering, was this intentional? Did they drop it while moving? Did Terrence, or Terry, whatever you want to call him, did he punch it out? Did he kick it out of frustration? Because his father reviews his books, which are about saving JFK. Terrence is very obsessed with the year 1963 for good reason. His father calls it derivative. He thinks he can do better. And in Terrence's office, you see Post-its notes that say, you can do better. You can do better. These sorts of details are very easy to miss if you just fly through the game. But the implicit storytelling in this game is where it shines. It's very important if you want a more in-depth look at the family. And so obviously Richard, who is Terrence's dad, he's good with writing in English and literature. Terrence is good with it, as well as Sam.
Yes.
Terrence's younger daughter, she loves to write. She's into creative writing. Terrence is struggling. I feel really bad for him, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel for him that we find out.
Yes.
So my thing with Terrence was my first playthrough, I didn't pick up a lot of the things about him. I really thought that he was just this author, and he was for this person who was getting these reviews and stuff, and then after that I didn't really pay attention on my first playthrough, and then when I played it again and started paying more attention to it, I was just like, okay, he's going through some things, and I'm just like, I still wasn't getting him as a character. But then, like, talking to you guys and thinking about it, I'm just like, okay, yeah, he did go through something. And seeing that when later on when he gets to the basement, there's a certain part of that environment that plays a major role into why he is the way he is and everything. And it kind of it's make you think why he's writing these books and why is it connected to this one little section of the game. You really don't think about that to be like, man, he is struggling with something, this mental problem. Not saying that he's like mentally crazy or anything, but I'm just like, there's something that's been damaged to his mental state that affects his livelihood and his workforce.
He's been traumatized.
Yes.
Big time.
And he hasn't had a chance to come out from it, overcome it and come out from that and really say something about it. And it's kind of like when you find out what's going on between him and his wife, and how this could have played a part if they written this way with Sam later on. It could have actually did something to play that, but it didn't go that far. And I was just like, okay, cool. It's like you said, Celeste, it's really kind of sad that when you find out some of the backstory about Terrence, you kind of feel for him. You kind of have this it's not, it could be emotional, but it's more such a moral thing. And to be like, man, or ethics thing, I should say, that, man, I'm like, you shouldn't have been treated this way at the age that you were. And you haven't had time to, I understand that it happened and it sucks that it happened, but you weren't given a outlet to recover from this, to use that outlet for him to recover. So we kind of see what happens to him going into his writing, in a sense, and why probably some of his reviews and his books haven't been doing so well, or at one point were doing so well, but all of that has kind of changed because he hasn't like really released emotional part of him. And when you kind of find out what happens with him and his wife and what they're doing, you kind of think about it, because me and Celeste was talking in the chat. I was just like, maybe if this thing happened and I wonder if his wife was going to find out, maybe he'll have this breakthrough that he needs.
And you also have to look at the time period too that what happened to him happened. A lot of families were very hush-hush about those kinds of things. In fact, he is very fortunate that his parents at least removed themselves from the problem completely. Yes. He was very fortunate. And I find with men especially, it's getting better as time goes on. With those kinds of situations, the trauma that they endure, a lot of men have trouble talking about their feelings, especially someone of his age, born in 1950, 1951. To work through, therapy, of course, was around, but it was seen as a sign of weakness to go talk to someone about your problems. So it's evidenced in his writing. His writing is his therapy. And that's one of the things the electronics review magazine chastises him for. You're putting too many personal anecdotes in here. The general public, not that they're dumb, but they just want, is this a good radio or is it a bad radio?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So yeah, and we're gonna touch about, because that's one thing that you didn't expect to play a part in this, but it's a big thing that plays a part with him. And everybody have to remember that when you're coming with a modern thought for something that would have been happening in the past, like you said, Celeste, at that time, this is 1995, and trying to use 2020's logic and ideal and question and reasoning stuff for that, it doesn't match. Like you said, therapy was a sign of weakness for men if they went now you see therapy in a whole different light for pretty much men, women, children. Like mental health in 2020 is a big thing. It wasn't such a big thing because there was a fear of it in 1995.
Yeah, which is crazy because you think back, it's like, this isn't like the eight. So it's crazy to think, just as an aside from the game, like how far, when you go back and you're playing through this game and you're thinking to yourself, I mean, if they all had cell phones, this thing would be over in like 30 seconds.
The game.
Right there when she first walks in, she texts her mom, "Hey, where are you guys at?" And game over. So it's always great going back. But yeah, factoring in things like that. Here we are just 25 years later, I guess the 1990s. But yeah, you have to keep a lot of that in mind as to why, there aren't simple, not that it's simple solutions, but why there aren't certain solutions in place for what's going on throughout this game.
So we're going to move on to the mom. And the mom, Janice, correct, Celeste?
Janice. Or Jan, whichever one.
She works for, I think, a wildlife I believe.
The Forestry Service.
For a reserve. And she has to drive an hour away from the house to her place of employment. And it seems that she's so involved with her place of work that it feels like when she comes home, she's frustrated. There's a lot that she deals with, and she keeps the job in her mind. So when that happens, that affects everybody in the house, in a sense. Now, Katie is gone and everything. So Terrence and Sim pretty much have to deal with her feelings, I should say, when she gets home. But then you kind of play the game later and you kind of suspect that, even she has some secrets about her. There's a story that she's get asked to a ticket to go to a concert. And I believe it's the Earth, Wind, and Fire concert. I believe, yes. For $25 is not bad.
That's a great price for a great band.
Yeah. So she takes him on with this ticket, and we kind of find out that she has sent a letter to one of her friends, saying, congratulations and everything. And the friend is just like, well, yeah, it's congratulations on hearing that you got this new position. But tell me about this guy that you went on to this concert with, because it seems that the way that you describe everything is that you got some feelings. It's more than just being, associates, employees with each other, but you have some kind of attraction to this, and has there been more going on? And that's pretty much all we know about Janice. So Celeste, what are your thoughts about that?
Oh gosh. Well, this is an example. Her story, of course, you have to dig around. I highly recommend you look in drawers, you look everywhere you can, because she has letters strewn about the house from her friend Carol, who was her college dorm roommate. And we also find out in the basement, we find Janice's naturalization certificate. So she's originally from Canada. And she became a citizen, I guess, in 1970 when she was in her 20s. And she's very good at her job. She seems like she's moving up, which I think, like you guys were talking about, all these different blows to Terrence's ego. For some men, it is a huge blow to their ego to see their female partner rise in their career and be successful while they are struggling. Maybe they're not able to work. Maybe their passions are not realized. They don't have that part of their identity. And Jan, like we were talking about, there's something is troubling her husband, Terrence, so much. So she seeks comfort in her younger coworker who has an out-of-town girlfriend.
Yeah.
And so she's kind of playing with, this is a spoiler. I don't think they ever engaged in anything physical. I think there might have just been an emotional on her end, an emotional affair, so to speak. But I think that Rick, the coworker, never saw it as anything more than just a good friend. And if you look on the refrigerator, you find out that is indeed the truth, because there is a wedding invitation.
Yes.
To Janice and Terrence for Rick and his fiance. I think her name is Helen. And Janice, she I don't want to say she's a boring character, but her story compared to everyone else's story is kind of blasé. But if you look under their bed, it looks like she and Rick were also exchanging favorite books, because he gives her a copy of Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. So they have a lot of intellectual interest, I think, too.
Yeah. And go ahead, Vinny.
And I same thing. She kind of gets the short end of the story stick here. But yeah, I had always felt that it's one of those things that you could look at it however you want. I don't think anything really took place, though. I think that it was maybe more kind of a fantasized thing for her. And obviously she was lacking a connection at home. With everything going on with her husband. A lot of things in this game come down to, I think, the husband, withdrawing because he's trying to deal with this thing, what we'll get into, later on. And I think it's kind of a trickle down. It's affecting his work, and it's affecting his marriage, and he's not there. So she is, and for the most part, it seems kind of like an innocent. I guess it depends on what kind of mind you have. If you're one of those that automatically suspects, the worst of people, you're going to think that there's a hot and heavy affair going on. But I mean, there just seems like someone for her to go out and do things with, because I imagine the husband is probably not that person anymore. It's someone to discuss books with. Just it all just seems like that Rick and I think Rick's probably a good guy, stand-up guy. But yeah, he's going through with the wedding. You see the invite there. There's a calendar there, and we'll get to that. It's a spoiler for, I guess, the fate of the husband and wife that will kind of towards the end when we wrap things up. But you kind of see the decision that she's kind of made with the entire thing time on that calendar. But yeah, I went through and played the first time. Oh, I feel bad because poor Jan, I wrote her off right there. There she. But I didn't see everything else. It's one of those. You'll get a different story depending on how much you look into it. Thing at the very beginning, and after seeing everything, after seeing the wedding invite from Rick, after seeing the calendar, I kind of got into the camp. It's like, all right, he was kind of a friend that was fulfilling probably an emotional and a social need, but I don't think really anything beyond that.
What about you, Ed? What do you think?
Jan was she wasn't a Jezebel, or anything like that. Because my thing was, it's just this is I think one of the things about this game is that even though you gotta find the narrative and the story through a lot of people's writings, I'm like, who is leaving letters around the house talking about you doing stuff like that? And why haven't Terrence found these letters and confronted Janice? But maybe he's been in such an emotional state that he knows but won't say anything because of what happens at the end. And I really feel like they didn't give Janice anything to really do, anything to make her stand out, no kind of background. Oh, we'll just say that she went to a concert with another man. That doesn't do nothing. You didn't really flesh her out. It feels like a big letdown that you flesh two of the characters in here and not the other one. There is no there's nothing to say about her. There's nothing to
Mhm.
think about her. She's a mom who when she finds out about one of the characters, she says something and then goes about her way, and that's all we know about her. And it's just
Mhm.
like this you can't really say nothing because you are nothing. You don't have no kind of backstory to you.
Mm.
So I think Jan was just there to I think she was just there to hide in. I don't know. She was just there. She was just like a piece of furniture that
Mm.
you see. You be like, oh, that's interesting. I won't pay that furniture no mind after I go leave out this room. And it's just
Yeah,
like, do I? Oh, go ahead, Vinny.
very kind of similar. I don't think it's lazy by any stretch, because the writing's tremendous. But I think that her character, yeah, is mainly there to kind of further the husband's
Hmm.
story.
She's collateral damage.
She's there, yes, to show the results of how what he's going through is impacting the family. And I think it's mainly, I guess maybe you had to sacrifice a character for that. But yeah, she really, it is everything we've discussed here. That's kind of all there is to her.
But
You don't really get to know her on any kind of level, really. You just get to know, because of what the husband's what's going on with him. She just kind of serves as a kind of a measuring stick of what that's doing to the family.
like they could have built this into a fair and have it play out where she started on the stage, she started getting these books in, they started finding interest, but then the blow to her
Mm.
was getting that wedding invitation to make her open her eyes that, man, I was so into this guy that
Hmm.
I feel somewhat used and betrayed because I thought I was going to be the one.
Mm.
Like it would have literally been like funny that you get into like the parents' house and you find like one of her books or something, um, or go into her room where she does art and stuff, and you see this painting of him or her imagination of her being with this other man instead of her husband.
Mm.
And then later on you walk into some divorce papers that weren't signed yet, but
Mm.
feel like I need to fill this out and give it, but she doesn't give the papers because she
Yeah.
finds out that they've been invited to a marriage.
Yeah.
They could have built something with her and they just did it.
I actually really
Yeah.
love her storyline because I think it's realistic. Because
Oh.
most relationships, I'm not speaking for everybody or anything,
Mhm.
but that is a realistic portrayal. There are ebbs and flows, there are problems, but it doesn't mean you have to consummate another relationship while you're with someone else. And I think the wedding invitation was helping knock her down to reality. She had in her
Mm.
heart a sense of fun and hope, and you even find a receipt from the beauty parlor in the house if you look under the
Mm.
couch. So that's showing that she's taking more of an interest in how she looks. She wants to impress Rick. But I really like her story. I know it's shadowed by everything else dramatic going on, but I think it's the most realistic portrayal because she's collateral damage to everybody else's problems and she's suffering quietly, but there are consequences. There could have been more extreme consequences had things
Mhm.
not
Mm.
fleshed
Mhm.
out.
Do you guys feel like it was rushed at the end of this?
Like with
'Cause-
her situation or just the whole.
yes, kind of like at the end, like when you
Mm.
find out that she took interest in Rick, uh, and then it just feel like well, you probably got about 55 more minutes for this game, so here we're just
Uh,
gonna rush it, and that was it.
I just do we speak of kind of ultimate spoil? We've talked about both of the parents. Do we speak of okay to speak of spoilers
We
as
could,
to what happened between the two of them?
we're gonna let's hold off to that.
All
We're gonna
right,
get to the
all right.
spoiler section where
We're
we
All right.
dying to talk about everything. There's so much to talk
I'll
about.
just say
yes.
I think I'll just say right now I think there's one detail when we get there that I think did a good job of tying up her end of things. So we'll talk about it that time.
Mhm.
Because that part plays a part into our final character, where
Hmm.
our main story, which
Yes.
is Sam, and
Can we
Sam
talk about
is
Katie a little bit though? before we talk about the
sure.
big one? I know,
Yeah.
so she's really, she is like Link in the Zelda series. She is your Link
Yeah.
to all these other
Mhm.
people's stories.
Oh yeah.
But you find out, so she's in Europe. She's in her early 20s. It sounds like she's very ambitious. She's very smart. You find all of these awards and papers with stellar grades throughout the house. She was great in track and field. So I kind of wonder if Sam felt like she was living in the shadow of her sister's success. Katie seems like she's this goody two shoes. She's straight laced. She's very successful. And and Sam is the younger sister, and she's going through things that, in addition to typical teenage issues, she's also dealing with her sexual identity. In the 90s, that, again, we have to remember, this is the 90s with don't ask, don't tell, things like that. And people were not as accepting of certain things that time period. But what did y'all think about just Katie, like finding all of her things around? Did you guys think much about Katie, or?
I think Katie was more of playing the role of the controller, that we just controller, and that's all. We find things out as she's finding things out, searching, reading the stories, listening to the tapes, finding the password codes, and she was just like the driving force to finding out what's going on. I don't think she really, I think with Sam and her relationship is that, Katie was sending the stuff to the family, but also sending stuff to Sam to be like, hey, I wish you was here, but I am doing good. I miss you and I love you, and things like that. And it's at the point where we get close to the end, there's a voice call from Sam saying that, telling Katie that, hey, I'm sorry that I missed your calls. I was asleep. And then when we get to the end of the game, we'll talk about that. But I think Sam and Katie had such a good relationship while Katie wasn't there. It was good, I think, for Sam to hear that how her sister was doing, but it was weird that Katie didn't find out much about Sam until she actually got home to find out, catch up of what's going on in the life of my sister and stuff. And I think they had to do that because if Katie knew what was going on with Sam, we wouldn't have gone home in the first place.
Yeah, and I think she's very much the tool the player uses to navigate through, and as such, they haven't fleshed her out much at all. You do with her sister, as Ed was saying. You also do that she was close with the parents, sending postcards home, and then. But I kind of got from it, she's been gone about a year at this point. I kind of got the feeling that she was maybe, things were probably uneasy well before, but she was maybe kind of the glue that kind of kept things at least a little bit together at home. At least somewhat. But when she was gone, with her presence gone, maybe that's when things further, kind of broke down. Around the house, as we'll find out with Sam, she's missing a big time in Sam's life where there's a lot going on with her. The parents, the marriage seems to start, crumbling a little bit while she's gone. So I do wonder how much it is of their, just this kind of perfect person that she's presented throughout the house being gone. How much she was actually doing, just being there, kind of keeping things together.
Yes. So, Katie doesn't have, she's not problematic. She is like the upbeat one. And I think that we needed a character like her because she doesn't follow no sides. I think she's so open, and she wants to know what's going on. So that kind of represents us as a player, that we have to go into this game being open so that we can find out what's going on. Because if if we were spoiled by other people before we played Go Home, or if you played Go Home, besides people listening to the podcast,
Mm.
you may end up picking a side without knowing why you picked that side.
Yeah.
You know,
One of my favorite, if I could add one about while we're still on Katie, I can't imagine we'll do much more with her. One of my favorite little details, and I think it's the only complaint lodged against her, which I have to imagine is a nod to the play style many of us undertook, is her parents complain about leaving too many lights on.
Yes.
Which I imagine is a reference to every time you go into a room and cut the light on, you're not, as the player, going to cut it off when you leave. You are controlling Katie as she cuts on every single light in the house and leaves it on, which I thought was and I didn't really understand that nod until have cut on every light switch in this house. Right now, every light in this house is on. So I thought that was a humorous way of kind of, predicting how the normal player going through was going to. Maybe next time I'll be a little more courteous. Maybe when I leave the room, I'll cut the lights out.
no, I'm gonna keep the lights on, because if I come to a house, y'all already had lights on, you left the TV on. Well, Sam left the TV on and everything, and that plays a part to the end. It's just like, I'm not about to be in this big old house just walking in the dark.
Yeah.
No, even the second time playing it, I was still creeped out, especially in addition to the thunder and lightning. The house makes all kind of creepy noises, creaking wood. And speaking of electricity, if you are in Terrence's office and read the electric report from the electrician, that plays a role in the game's one jump scare.
Yes, it has one, and it's super effective. It really is. Because I think it comes at a point where you're starting, if you're reading everything, you're getting a lot of the ghost speculation. Sam and her friend, as we'll find out more about them as we go, are dead set on that there's a ghost in this house. They're talking about like seances, ways to kind of conjure this ghost or find this ghost in the house. And I think about the time that scare rolls around, that's kind of at its peak of the game. The whole is the house haunted or is it not branch of the story.
Should we tell them what the jump scare is, or we'll just let them find it?
Oh, you can't. I think that's the one thing we can't spoil. It's the one thing that is going to be spoiler free. Everyone deserves to go into that with their guard down for full effect.
Yes.
It is easy to miss, but just look around really thoroughly.
Yes.
Yes. So we get into Sam, who the game kind of revolves in, and she's a high school student who, she, at first you read about her, having trouble making friends, but then she kind of meets the one particular girl named Lottie, and they become close through playing video games, and we know one of their favorites is Street Fighter.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh yeah, Street Fighter 2 was out. That was a big part of the game. And you kind of learn more and more about them, about how Lottie got her into listening to certain kind of bands, how Lottie's mom is such a big Christian, but lives in Florida. She says that she's with this guy who is a tool and everything. And Lottie kind of likes Sam's mom compared to her own. And then we learn throughout that, Sam is figuring out that she starts liking girls and everything. And she ends up having a big crush on Lottie, but then ends up falling in love in a particular way. And we hear her do these not audio files, but do different parts when you pick stuff up and put it down. There's an audio thing that starts playing, narrating what Katie is fighting out and stuff. And throughout the journey, it's just like, I met this girl at first. I just wanted to be friends, but it feels something different when I'm around her and everything. And
It's
so,
Sam's story. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, sorry.
no,
Sam's
no,
story. I think my highest compliments to the voice actress for Sam's part reading these diaries out. You're basically getting written diary pages, just being read out to the player. Oh, and it's really tremendous. And you see that Sam has got the writing bug from her father.
hmm
Definitely, she's very prolific in getting out her feelings and kind of pivotal moment, these discoveries she's making in her life. And I love one of those things where I think we all can kind of put ourselves back then. Some of us way back further. That kind of first love, that kind of regardless of what type of relationship it is, that kind of first love, those butterflies, those feelings like that, that nervousness, that anxiousness, and they do such a good job of writing that, and the voice actress does such a good job of kind of conveying that, and you get it even gets me here in my late 30s. I get a little bit of the flutters. I just hearing about this kind of love story that you see kind of slowly building, and her, discovering her. It's very much a coming of age. This young lady, I think she's 16, 17,
Mm-hmm.
kind of discovering her sexuality, her, this crush, which eventually turns into a love. And I think it's done in such a great way. And there's a good little build up to it also.
yes,
Like she starts you off from the meeting to, hanging out, to sneaking out, to kind of a relationship in secret. And ultimately, once again, this is into the game stuff we'll get to, a conclusion to the whole thing, or at least for now, as much a conclusion as we're going to get.
yes.
But no, I was so taken aback. This is still one of my favorite. We talked about the voice acting of Edith Finch, which is also, and I think it comes down to the fact for walking simulators, it's all about the voice acting a lot of
Yeah.
time, because there's not that action component there to draw you in. Bad voice acting would have it would have killed a game like this, no matter how great the environment might be. So yeah, this is my favorite bit of voice acting in a video game, probably.
So that's what's your thoughts about Sam?
Oh, she's such a great character. I love
Mm-hmm.
the little I love the implicit storytelling where you find out she's kind of a rebel. There's a pack of cigarettes
Mm-hmm.
in her
Mm-hmm.
locker in her room, which I thought was hilarious. There's I don't know if it was an in-school suspension slip or a detention slip she received.
Mm-hmm.
Her parents do find out that she is a lesbian, and they don't send her to a conversion camp or anything crazy like
No,
that, but they
they say
there's
that
struggle.
they say that she doesn't know what she wants
It's a
because she hasn't.
phase.
Yeah,
Yes, they say it's just a phase. And I thought it was hilarious how Sam was like, I've known since She-Ra.
Yeah.
That was
yeah,
so funny. And I think she and Katie are very close, but I also feel like in some ways Katie is the ideal daughter. Sam is giving her parents trouble and she's rebelling. She and Lonnie are very into that riot girl music genre of the
Yes.
90s. They're into writing zines, they're into going to shows. Lonnie, we find out, is in a band. But oh gosh, it brings me back to being a teenager, and I was a
Oh
goody
yeah.
two shoes. I was way more of a Katie than a Sam, but just your first crushes, your first relationships, going out places, and Lonnie is not like a bad girl, so to speak, but I
No.
think because of her, Sam is introduced to this riot girl movement. It kind of makes you
Mm.
think about just those people in your life who have introduced you to different music, books, lifestyles, concerts, events, whatever. And I hope that teenagers today can get that again soon after things settle down.
And it's interesting that it's interesting that you say that, Celeste, because when we think of coming of age stories or even just homosexuality in general in games, we kind of we have Tell Me Why, which deals with transgender as characters. We have Mass Effect, where you could choose your character to be gay or not, male or female. We have the big controversy with The Last of Us Part 2, where we find out that our main character, Ellie, we knew that she was gay and a lesbian in the Left Behind DLC, and then it's really fully explored more in The Last of Us Part 2, and there was just so much upset with it and everything, and it kind of feels like when it does deal with LGBTQ kind of characters, a lot of it has been leaning more to females than males, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's easier when people are portraying female love than gay love, in a sense, where there's male love, because I think the pushback will be there'll still be an upset and stuff, but I think like a lot of people will start using the F word, with the FT word, I would say, then they will when it comes to women and stuff, and this game does it such in a manner that it reveals it slowly. It pulls back the layers, where if you want to know what's going on, you could probably hit at it, but you're not for sure until you get confirmation that this character is something. And so at like just listening to Sam tell her story, and you even hear the emotion in her words, where she's talking about, after a concert, it was kind of packed, so I had to go to her best friend's house. I think it's Daniel, and Lottie was there, and I turned around and I saw her, and she was looking at me and I was looking at her, and I told her this thing and she said this, and it was just like in her words and her speaking, you could feel that emotional connection.
Yeah, it's very natural, very natural. It doesn't feel like a forced storyline or anything like that. It's not sensationalized or anything. It's very much it's very much a natural thing and progression, and they take their time with it, which I really do appreciate. Obviously, you kind of know yourself from early on, as soon as she's talking, the way just the inflection in the voice of the voice actors when she first brings up Lonnie. You kind of get that there might be something there, but still they slowly and very naturally bring this love story around, and it's still, I think that's probably what makes it as effective as it is, where I think that's something a lot of games handle in kind of a sensationalized or even kind of a lazy format sometimes. And a lot of times it feels like maybe it's just pandering, maybe it's just trying to, hey, let's try to appeal, let's just try to appeal to this crowd with a half thought out character. But no, I think this is a great way to flesh out this character. It feels like a character that you really know what she's thinking, how she's feeling. You can get in her nerves. And I think this is probably, obviously I won't speak for everyone, but I think in that community in a video game.
Oh no, he cut you out a little bit, Billy, as you were about to say what you were going to say about the community.
Oh, I was saying, for this community, I think in video games, this is probably one of the best forms of representation.
Yeah, and it's kind of the thing. Well, like I said, it's 1995, and you really couldn't be out there. There were people who were making strides to be out there, but you couldn't really be out there without being called a certain term or be looked at in different ways around that time.
And
so
I do wonder if that's why they chose kind of the, you don't see a lot of things like mid-90s. I wonder if it's one of those where that's a time that doesn't seem like way back black and white TV days or anything like that. But it's still so far removed from where we're at now in terms of acceptance and things like that. So I do wonder if they kind of picked a time where it would still seem at least semi-modern, but still, kind of socially and things like that, things were still so much different. So I think it was pretty smart and probably very deliberate with kind of picking that mid-90s.
Yeah, and everybody got to realize that, when you see the tapes and stuff lying around and you playing it, and you're hearing all of these songs and stuff, like you said, Celeste, it was kind of, not being such a bad girl, but, being against, being a rebel and stuff. And you had this kind of punk rebellion beginning to start up, but it was still small. It was like really, we weren't in the emo phase yet or anything with characters.
No, that was 2000s.
But it was like the rebellion was there. Sam was having the freedom to express, trying to be who she wanted to be, because at this time she didn't know who she wanted to be. Her parents were going through so much that they weren't seeing what Sam was really going through. Yeah, they would get like stuff in the mail in high school and from the high school and just be like, well, Sam, what's going on? You're not this kind of person. You got to be like Katie and all of this. And it was just like, you say that and you walk away. So where is discipline? Where's talking to Sam and everything? And it felt like, even though when Sam was getting in trouble, her parents still didn't care because they were doing their own thing and they were in their own world, which leads into the spoiler territory. So if you guys have not played Gone Home, we do recommend that you go play it to understand what we are going to be talking about. We want to make sure that we are going to be doing full spoilers on it. So if you don't want to be spoiled, continue to listen to the podcast. If not, go play Go Home and search the house, get the story, because there might be some things that we missed. Get the story in full and then go into that ending and then come back in, hear our thoughts. So we're going to kind of start with Terrence. We're going to hold off the Sam to the end. We're going to start with Terrence in a sense. So with Terrence, there's this possibility that he has been molested by Oscar. And so that molestation has affected him as a kid. So in the game, it stops at 1963 when he turns 12, I believe 12. And when that happens, they it feels like they got away from Oscar. And then Oscar was talking about how he didn't want to sell the store, how he was a pharmacist, and you kind of opened up the safes and find these drugs and this letter and everything. And it was just like Oscar had his own situation, but it's implied that he had been molesting Terrence as he was growing up and everything, and it stopped at the age of 12. And so when you think of the 1963 in Terrence's books, it's connected to him growing up in around Oscar and that house. So so that is the implication about that. That was kind of the big reveal that Oscar was a molester, a pedophile, and we don't know.
That's so easy. This is probably so easy to miss also, because and I didn't get this until maybe the third go round. But no, Oscar was definitely getting high on his own supply. He's a pharmacist. You get that safe. Yeah, there's various drugs there to be had.
Morphine.
The heavy stuff. But in the basement, and the basement itself has a different feel from the rest of the house. It's very kind of a dingy, kind of a sinister overtone to it, even before you know anything is going on. And at the time, it might be because you're still on the ghost trail here. That's kind of what you have in mind. But what you find instead of that is a real life horror. And instead of a paranormal one. And there's just little things like Terrence has a growth chart, down there. You find a really dingy area where there are, children's toys laying around. It's enough there to heavily imply. You find out that the family has pretty much, Oscar's out of their life. They're done with him. And I'm assuming, played the guilt of it played a role in Terrence being given the house. But you also see, and I took it to be the fascination with the year 1963 and the theme of his book. Someone is going back to try to change something awful that happened. There's that fascination with being able to go back and right or wrong or change a terrible situation. It prevails throughout his book. And I thought that it was really heavily ingrained in that. And then all of a sudden, after you pick up that little detail alone, tells you all you need to know about what he's going through, obviously being back in this. I don't know if financially this was a move he had to make, taking this house maybe. Is not getting the book money coming into him, things like that. I don't know if this was just I've got this house here, I can't afford this, so he's there now. He's dealing with being back in this environment, and obviously a lot has gone on down in the basement. I don't think he's probably ventured down there very much. Like I said, his childhood toys are still strewn about down there. So outside of, Sam and whatnot, also going down there and kind of hanging out. I don't feel like that's an area of the house he probably explores. And I probably think that it's really weighing on him at this point. I'm sure he's already dealing with it. But this adds another layer to that. And that is, probably going back to the wife, making him more distant, making him kind of less of a partner, a romantic partner, and just kind of, someone else living in the house, which is she's having to go out and have her, kind of social, going to concerts with another guy or just talking books, things like that I'm sure the couple in happier times probably enjoyed doing.
Yeah. There is one part in the game where you'll find this code to get into the safe, and it kind of tells Oscar is explaining that he wants to be forgiven for his transgressions.
Yes,
and that's kind of one of the big things about they're hinting at that he kind of wants to be forgiven for what he's done to Terrence as a kid and everything. And at this point in time, it's kind of late for forgiveness to happen or anything. But, like you said, Billy, probably for financial reasons, he took this house. If Terrence was really still, even if I think he wasn't struggling or anything, he shouldn't have taken this house. But he knew that this may be a big opportunity to bring his family into this big house. He really don't have to pay a house note or anything, so he's saving money. And maybe that's why he doesn't want all the lights on, because the electric bill might be high.
That's it. For maintenance and utilities.
Right. And knowing that his wife is the breadwinner of everything at this time being, is that once again, you see a pizza box in the house and stuff. Yeah. And you see like one dish or a couple of dishes laid around and stuff like that. It kind of feels like that Terrence, he took this on to probably see that, this was my uncle's and I'm keeping this house like as a family tradition thing instead of what was done to me as a kid. I know the truth what happened to me as a kid with my uncle, but I'm going to overlook that because I'm going to accept this offer of this house and everything. Celeste, what did you think about like the spoiler or not spoiler, the anything with Oscar?
The first time I played, I thought he was either gay or a cross-dresser because there is a secret passage which again, I don't know why someone would want secret passages like that in their house. It's a little bizarre. And there are pictures of women's clothing ads around. So I was thinking, okay, transgression. Did he cross-dress? Which of course in the 1960s, that was incredibly underground. It was taboo. And then I thought, okay, well, was he gay? I thought that as well. It did not occur to me that he had abused Terrence until I started. I'm someone who, after I play these games, I like to go read theories and everything. So that's when it occurred to me, oh, the light bulbs went off with everything. So do you guys think with the morphine and the different drugs, and I was reading that someone said one of the drugs mentioned in there is something they use for chemical castration, possibly. Do you guys think that Oscar was using the morphine on himself, or do you think he was giving that to Terrence?
I think he was using it on himself. I think it's like he's been trying to run away from the thought of hurting his own family member. It's probably got instilled in his mind, because that's why he's asking for this forgiveness for this transgression. He had to deal with what he done to his nephew, and dealing with that, and not having a chance to say I apologize or turn himself in or anything like that. He had to deal with the horror of this memory replaying in his mind. So probably every time because the thing about it is that if he wasn't dealing with this, he would have wiped off or painted over the dates and stuff of measuring Terrence while he was going up. He would have just painted that over, but he didn't. He kept the toys. He kept everything that led to this memory of what he did to him. And so in order to forget it, I'm just going to use some drugs, and it may help me feel better about myself and not be able to think of it. When it wears off and stuff, I have to face the reality, but I know when I have to face the reality, when it gets to that time, I can escape it by injecting some stuff. I think because it looks like he didn't really have a wife that I knew of. So in order to, he may have a mind, and I am this, but I can't really express it. There's something about a young male that attracts and probably was attractive to Oscar, and why go look out when my youngest nephew probably don't understand what's going on. I could just tell him that this is all part of the human condition. This is kind of how, make up some excuse to find a way to follow him in a sense, or have his way with him and stuff.
I agree. I think that Oscar was probably seemed to be, and we don't know much about his upbringing. We don't know if he went through kind of shaped him. But I think that there does seem to be a really significantly deep regret there. But what are you going to do? I mean, the parents definitely in the right, kind of, erasing him from the family, basically. And I think that was something that he probably did live with, and suffered over. But it falls into one of those things. It's still, I think, a transgression that keeps him far from being still a sympathetic character, or anything like that. But the good thing is, things for Terrence towards the end are starting to look up in some ways, both professionally And in terms of the marriage, that by all intents looks like it's crumbling, as you go around later in the game, you start to get at least a shred of hope that maybe it's not over. Ed pointed out the divorce papers that weren't signed, obviously a thought, but that hadn't been followed through on. You do find out a couple things with Terrence. One being a company has gotten really interested in his old books and are wanting to republish them and are wanting him to continue. So he is, as of the last we hear, going to be getting back to what he loved doing. And I think what served as his kind of form of therapy, getting down there and writing these books, continuing this story that he obviously had planned more for before it got cut off. And at the same time, on the other end of things, love end of things, we start seeing talk of a couple's retreat, a counseling retreat, which is a hopeful sign that maybe things are going to turn around. And I would like to personally think on that retreat, that counseling, he's going to get a lot out. Maybe he's going to get all of this out during that. His past, the things from his past that occurred that are bogging him down, things professionally that are going on with him that might be impacting things. Ultimately, we don't know their fate, but we know both parties are willing. We find that Jan on the calendar decided, instead of going to Rick's wedding, has chose to go on this retreat and try to make things right with her husband and her marriage, which leads me to believe that she has realized, like, all right, this fantasy, it's nice. I need to stop focusing on it. Maybe I can have what I was fantasizing about with this fella. Maybe I can have this with my husband again if we go to this and we start working on things. So I was honestly very hopeful, just based on the fact that both of them seemed like they were willing to give this a go. I left the game. I don't know how you guys were feeling. I left the game at least hopeful for the parents.
Okay, so first time I played it, I thought they left to go after Sam. I didn't catch that they left to go for
the retreat
until I played the game again and explore more. Be like, oh, so that's why they're not there. I thought they left to go find where Sam is at. And we'll get to that. Celeste, what are your thoughts?
I think I just want to say about Terrence that I kind of wonder if he was susceptible to Oscar because perhaps he had a contentious relationship with his father, never able to please him. So maybe he was close with Oscar and that's where he sought his comfort. And we did learn that Oscar removed himself from temptation. So that's why he sold his pharmacy, because young people go there. So that's just another thing that you pick up on, all of these little hints. And I really do hope that the couple's retreat works out for them. And that is something I felt very hopeful. I felt so happy for Terrence. And I hope that I was really proud of him for agreeing to go on this retreat, because those aren't easy things to talk about. People today still have trouble talking about issues. So I can only imagine it was even harder for someone who grew up when he did. And I thought it was really cool that this publisher found his book at a yard sale.
Yes.
That was, what luck is that they found copies of his old book, The Accidental Savior, The Accidental Pariah, I believe. And I loved it. I was so excited for him. And he seems like a really loving father. I think he's very close with his daughters, and I think he cares for them. I think he cares for his wife. He's also a jazz fan. We find out throughout the game. He just seems
he can't be that bad a guy then.
No, it sounds like a good old guy. And I felt very optimistic for him. And in ways, I see what the parents are doing is kind of parallel with what Sam does. I see a
Yeah.
lot of connections with that.
Things with Sam, I got a little worried. I got worried in more ways than one. Because we find out one of the last diary entries that you hear, or a couple of the last ones. Things with her and Lonnie are still going great in secret. Except Lonnie is going off to the military.
Yes.
And is going to be going. And this is the 90s. This is not, FaceTiming. This isn't, calling or texting any old time, instantly hearing back. This is, especially the military, this is, if anything, not going to see each other. Letter writing at best, maybe a phone call here and there. This is essentially, and it's hard to imagine this. There was a point in time where, like, if a friend moved out of town, you probably weren't going to talk to them again. There was a lot of effort that was going to have to be put into that. And I can imagine the fear that, especially if Lonnie's going off to the military, there's not going to be time.
Yeah. And it gets me feeling why Sam miss Kate's
Yes.
phone calls, because she got a phone call for Lottie, and Lottie said she couldn't go through it. She really wanted to be with Sam. She couldn't get on the bus, and if she could get in her car and come to Salem to go pick her up. And you find out at the end when you read the last diary that that's what she did. She said, sorry that I can't see you and stuff, but I grabbed as much as I can, and I hopped in the car and I went to go look for Lottie, and we're going to live our lives as it is. And at that time, you kind of you realize that we'll catch up one day, we'll see each other one day and stuff. And so it kind of feels that Sam is running away from her home. She's dropping out of high school, or she had a job because she had a schedule on the refrigerator on her work schedule. So she had money, and we know that she had her own car and stuff. So maybe Lottie and Sam make a new life in Salem. And the only ones who gonna know about it is going to be Katie and stuff. And so we kind of see everything is being revealed to the player, that this is all the stuff that is happening, and it is on that note.
Let me start by saying there is an attic that you see pretty early in the game when you're exploring, but you can't get to. And it's just something about there's lighting around it.
Red lights.
And it looks, that's never good. That's never good in video games usually. And I had a great fear that I expected the worst. When you get up to the attic, you just heard that Lonnie is leaving. Sam does distraught about things. I didn't know what state we were going to find her in when you get up to that attic, alive or not. I had all visions that we were going to find a dead body up there, essentially.
I did. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's in your mind, because it's still a creepy. The lightning's still going. The ghost thing didn't. So you're like, there might be one horrible moment in this game. Let's see. But instead you get, you get the home for Christmas duck when you get up there. But you also get just a very touching area. You can tell this is where Sam and Lonnie spent time together. You've got the pictures that Sam's taken of the two of them holding hands and whatnot. And you get a very emotional ending. In mid-30s me was sitting there. I was damn bawling at this point in time. You get such a touching ending, but a little bit of uncertainty. Running away from home, both of them 17, but setting off to start this life together. Where are they going to go? what money are they going to have? What are they going to do? There's a lot of questions, but I still get the feeling for everybody. I get the feeling that things are going to turn out okay. And I'm hoping that, like I said before, that how Katie maybe was kind of the glue that was kind of keeping things together. She seemed like a bridge between her parents and Sam, and that she was perfect. Both of them loved her. That she was kind of a bridge there. And I'm hopeful that with her being back, and I think the parents were set to return from the retreat later of the day you've arrived. So the parents are going to get home to Katie delivering this news. And I can only hope that she presents it in a way that kind of at least warms the parents up to things, that maybe opens their mind up and makes them accepting of what's going on, and that everybody, and that she's not away from her sister for long, that she gets in touch, and that maybe there's a happily ever after for all involved. It's definitely up in the air with Katie being back, that she's going to try to smooth these things over, and that she's going to try to bring the together a little bit. I know they've got things to work on, most likely, but I'm hoping she'll bring that family back together, Lonnie included. I'm very hopeful by the end of it.
I yelled at the game and took it off my Xbox. I was upset about this ending.
I could see that this goes, that you either love the end of this or it's the exact opposite. I think there is a strong reaction to it one way or the other, because you think for all intents and purposes there's going to be something more. They tease the ghost story throughout, and I was really focused on that at the beginning. Anything haunted house wise, I'm all in. So when I got there, I was like, okay, that was really moving, but instead of getting and I thought it was nice that I'm playing a video game and I'm not saving the world. I'm not defeating some great evil. I'm not rescuing the princess. I am just living a small slice of a family's life. Just something so mundane as that. I think the fact that you don't do that with any game you pop in.
I felt cheated out by the narrative. I felt like
what would you have liked? What would
I would have loved some things fleshed out with the mom and stuff, but I would have loved, like, if she's reading. If we're not going to get a visual of Sam driving or take over as Sam driving to get Lottie, at least after you get done reading the thing, and when the credit thing comes on that says go home, that you hear the mom and dad says, Katie, Sam, we're home, and then cut it off right there. To be like, oh, this is about to pop off. Because I'm like, this is 1995. You could have made this game. Yes, it could have been a little bit more dramatic. It could have been more rewarding in a sense. And it was just mostly like, it was like touch and go. You touch stuff, find something about it, go to the next thing that you want to do. And I'm like, the payoff in it just felt like, yes, you got to get to this last part. You got to unlock it and, find out how the story concludes. Yeah. But I'm just like, you could have fleshed out more. Like, were there any arguments between Lottie and Sam? Because even when Lottie told Sam that, why she was in JRTC and why she was leaving that day and stuff, Lottie was talking about the don't ask, don't tell thing. And she's just like, don't nobody need to know my business. And that should have caused an argument. That should have hurt Sam to be like, you should care about it and stuff. And there should have been some rift, but it was nothing there. There was no rift. It was just like, I'm gonna read the thing. You go and search the house some more to find out what's going on. And it's just like, oh, well, I'm still thinking about my girl and la la da this and that. And it's just like, no, you have found something where your partner doesn't care about it. That should be a big deal. You should be able to talk to her to be like, we need to figure this out because this means something big to me, but even though it may not be big to you, you should be able to go into where you want to do and be who you are. And you have to, we call it code switching nowadays. You kind of got a code switch and fake who you are, even though you're serving in the army and stuff. And who knows that if you're gonna be around other females and stuff. So who knows if you're going to be attracted to that and stuff, where this don't ask, don't tell policy and stuff, where it's just like, yeah, you're hiding your sexuality, but you may be in interest in somebody. Now, how does that play against Sam? Because you're gone. And Sam can't really be there or reach you and stuff. So that may cause a rift of growing apart. But this one thing could have really meant something, you know.
And I felt like Lonnie was trying to escape a not so great home environment. And probably this was the only out for her. This was the only way out of the house, maybe. That she had probably thought about it. I the initial thought would be, oh, maybe we could run off together. But then she probably started thinking of the logistics of it. It's like, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? But so I always thought that this was just something that maybe she felt like she had to do. So she didn't really care. She just wanted to get out of that house. Fine, I'll do whatever I've got to do to get out of this house. If this is my only option, whatever, I'll do it. It didn't seem like something that her heart was in. A lot of people go into the military and they have reasons for doing so. It didn't feel like that with her. It just felt like more of something she had to do, kind of her only escape until she got there. And I think the thoughts that she probably originally had about running off and starting something with Sam that she thought were irrational, she got to the point to where it's like, I don't know how it's going to work, but I can't be without. So she's taking a life of kind of uncertainty, and who knows, works out, but it very well may not. She's decided to kind of take on this life of uncertainty, stress in the future, and there's probably going to be worries and problems that have to work out. But she's deciding to go for her own happiness at the end.
Yeah. Celeste, what did you think of the ending?
Yes. I felt relief. I felt so much relief that there was not a body hanging from the rafters.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed the ending. It took me off guard, definitely. But like Ed was talking about with the paradox of Lonnie's decisions to join the military, we learned that her father served in the military. The army is in her blood, so to speak. And like Billy was saying, that probably was her only escape. She is not close with her mother, even though her mother lives in Florida. She doesn't want to go see her. Her mother's remarried. She doesn't like her stepdad. And I did like that we did see some beginnings, some quaking of conflict, because Sam is so confused. How can you be in JROTC and be okay with Don't Ask, Don't Tell while you're also supporting riot girl movements and being yourself and going against authority? And again, the military, I think Lonnie, like most people, she's conflicted. There are things she likes about the riot girl movement. There are things she likes about that underground punk life, but there are also things she respects about the military. Maybe she felt that that's where her talents lie. They, I do wonder how they're going to make it, but I think that the ending was really cool because the teenagers, especially, and young adults make very rash decisions. They live in the heat of the moment. They might not be thinking long term. And I really like the ending because before that, we're living in the past. The story is found through things that have happened. Now we have caught up. Now what lies ahead? That's what I really enjoyed about that ending. And again, I see a parallel between Sam's and Lonnie's journey and Jan and Terrence's journey. They're going off. They just might be on to a good horizon. Some hope.
Yeah, hopefully. Did anybody pick up on the hidden cat-centric journal entry throughout the game?
No, I did not.
Is it about Mittens?
Yes. The Mittens, boy, there is a part in the garage. There's a little, with a little purple ball up at the top, which only a cat could drag up there. If you can get that ball down, usually you can pick up pretty much anything in this game. Anything you look at, you can manipulate. If you can knock that ball down, bring the ball to Sam's room and put it into the basketball net there, the TV will cut on and you will get several different pictures of cats and various meows.
Wow.
Yes, that's
So
definitely
cute.
definitely worth looking into. There are so many neat Easter eggs in this game. Did anybody play it on the Switch by any chance?
No.
No.
For the Nintendo, for other versions, there are, when you go into Sam's room, obviously Super Nintendo cartridges. And each one is kind of a play on real games, including one, and this was a bizarre kind of connection. There's one called Super Spitfire, which the developer did confirm is the sequel to the Spitfire game you play in BioShock 2. Thus very loosely putting these, imagine that as you're playing through Gone Home, there is a city under the sea, that's in disrepair at that point in time in the 90s. But that is supposed to be a direct sequel to the like DOS fire game you play in BioShock 2. But in the Switch version, they have taken the cartridges and Nintendo actually made them Nintendo cartridges. Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, Mario Kart, which I thought was a neat little nod. But there are going to be some familiar books when you play through there. I do believe one of Terrence's books pops up in Fire.
Yes, in the little crates where you get
the
your
little
supplies.
supply thing. Yes. So this game, it's one of those games. When you look at the runtime of it, it's not long. And like Ed said, there's an achievement for getting through it in a minute. That's doable. But no, it's one of those where you can sit down with this. You can play through in an hour and a half or so, get all of Sam's story for the most part, but not know a single other thing. I just, like I said, the very beginning. To go full circle with it, this is one of those games where you get out of it what you put into it. And if you really want to explore every nook and cranny, by the end of it, you'll know, every little dark secret of this family. All the tragic past for Terrence, everything with Oscar, the kind of the trials the couple is going through. And the hopeful conclusion to that. But yeah, I can see why you either just love this game or don't, or at least have a strong opinion about it either way. It's definitely unconventional, and at that time, it kind of, like we said before, Ed gave this one a lot of credit for being like the main kind of first real mainstream walking sim. and it kind of made it okay that your game doesn't have to have some big universal repercussions to it. The world is not going to explode if you don't finish this game, or that no lives are at stake that you're trying to save or anything like that. And I just back then at that time to just play through a game where I'm living a night in a normal average person's life, exploring things that really could happen to any of us. I think all of us either had or know kids growing up that had parents, with a kind of a rocky marriage. You all either at your own home or you went to someone's house and you're like, ooh, it's a little tense here. Even not knowing anything, you can kind of like, ooh, it's an odd environment. And I think we've all, or once again, all know or do know someone that went through that kind of that teenage kind of discovering about themselves. I mean, we all obviously went through that with kind of crushes, falling in love, young love, things like that. Relationships that you were sure were going to carry you through to the end, but carried through about a week. I think we've all been there. But this seems like a very strong bond between these two, which I hope does last. And like I said, from the second perspective of characters discovering their sexuality throughout, which we've all known people, or are those people that have gone through that also, kind of figuring out the world and what you want in it. And all of that. And I think this game did a great job of getting all of that across. It's not spectacular. There's no big set pieces or anything like that. But I just think this is a nice kind of, once you know that nothing's going to jump out around the corner and there's no bodies hanging in the attic, it becomes a very relaxing kind of game to play through. And it's one of those, like Edith Finch, I said that I'll play it again for sure, and I'll find something new. I'll find something like, oh, I wish I would have found that to bring up, because there's just so much. And even covering every little corner, I just think this is one of those games you could play a dozen times, and still there's going to be some other little slip of paper or something laying there that's going to continue to kind of enrich the game.
And I love it too, because I don't know if you guys are like this, but sometimes you drive by a house or you just find yourself wondering, I wonder what goes on there. I wonder what they're
yes.
doing. I don't want to go be a voyeur or anything. I don't want to set up cameras and do anything creepy.
Celeste lives in your neighborhood. Pull the curtains. You might find a face on the other side of the glass. But no, I know what you're talking about. You drive by and it's like, well, I wonder, like I used to be obsessed as a kid, driving by a house and seeing the TV on inside another house. It's like, I wonder what they're watching. I wonder, it's like thoughts that would race. I wonder what they're watching. I wonder how many people are watching it. I wonder what they did today. Just little weird things like that, which apparently aren't so weird. Thank you. For getting that across.
The house is just the vessel. You can miss so much if you don't look. And I don't go to people's houses and start rifling through their drawers. There are things I probably do not want to find in their drawers. Oh, there is a funny part about that in the parents' bedroom. So make sure to look in their drawers. There's a nice little uncomfortable item if you're a child and you find it that your parents are using. That's all I'm going to say. Yes,
and that was one I could relate to. And yes, that feeling of discomfort washed over me anew at that point in time. But there's just so much here, and this is it's everywhere. PC, every console. You can pick it up on the phone if you want, but I would say if you got another means to do that. And I think if you had played Edith Finch, but didn't play this one yet, it feels like it's still exploring a house, but this definitely feels like a smaller This is definitely a smaller, kind of more intimate look into people's lives than Edith Finch. Edith Finch had so much ground to cover. And you were just getting snippets. You were getting like little stories here and there about some characters, more about others. But in this one, I feel like you're really, you're kind of, if you daughter or sister, you're definitely snooping. You're getting the dirt on these people's lives, and it's done in a way where okay, this is just someone trying to find out where their family is. This is someone acting out of concern, where otherwise, it's the best way to, I think, snoop around in people's lives,
Nice,
and not have to feel.
You don't have to worry about getting arrested.
That's right. That's right.
Well, everybody.
But
that is going to be it for Talk the Walk. I'm sorry,
Yes.
Billy.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
We have discussed Go Home, but we will be back next month because our next game that we are playing is Soma. So I have never played this game.
Me either.
This is going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, I will say that all the scares and all the terrible things you thought you would encounter in this one, I think all those went into Soma. There are definitely it's interesting, and it's going to be a big change of environment too.
Yes.
We're not exploring houses anymore that I'll never afford to be able to purchase. We are going into some odd territory, and Soma was one of those that caught me really off guard when I first played through it. But yeah, we're not going to discuss anything here other than that it's a very thought-provoking game. It brought up a lot of questions within me as I'm thrilled that we're going to be playing through that. And Celeste, I guess, is this going to be a daytime hours?
Yes.
Are you, Katie, every light on in the house?
Yes.
As you play through this one?
I even played Gone Home during the day, even though I knew exactly what was going to happen because I am a weenie, even though I knew everything that was going to happen. But I understand there is a weenie version of Soma. So yes. I might be playing that version.
So, Billy, where can we find you?
You can find me. I have a podcast with a couple other decent fellas, Retrovaniacs. I have to come here to talk my walking sims because we cover the older games, a PS2 era, PS2, GameCube, original Xbox, and before. So if you're into older games, we are cranking those out a couple times a month. We got a Patreon where we're cranking out a couple of others a month. We're getting ready to enter the Halloween season. My personal favorite time. We really put a lot of work into our Halloween episodes. They're usually super cheesy. It's the equivalent of, walking into a house that has like the plastic skeletons and the little ghosts, the little sheet ghosts laying around everywhere in podcast form. Our Twitter is the same, Retrovaniacs. You can catch up with us on there. We have a YouTube, which oddly, we're going to throw it off a little bit. The YouTube is retrovania.net. And that's also the website that kind of has all of our social media things there. Some written articles for us old timers that played through this game and remembered 1995 very well, that still love a little bit of written content. We've got some for you on there. And I think that's about it. I am on Twitch occasionally. I'll be returning there finally. I had to take a couple of months off due to work and just the world in general. But I'll be returning on there. They usually coax me into playing some shitty games that I otherwise would stay very far away from. I have now played both Bubsy games, which is 2 more Bubsy games than I ever wanted to play. But no, we will occasionally be on there. Usually me. One of the other guys might be every now and then. But I think that about covers it.
Celeste, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Fairy Crypt, and I'm also with another Zelda podcast. So if you like Zelda, I would check it out. We have articles on the website. We have recorded episodes, a lot of evergreen content. So it's not so much news, but different topics, theory, symbolism, speculation. So check it out.
Yes. And you guys can find me on Twitter at that retro code. You can check out Optional Opinion on SoundCloud, iTunes, and other podcast apps. You can find more of Boss Rush Games at bossrushgames.com and on our YouTube page at Boss Rush Games on channel. You can find us on Twitch at Boss Rush Games, where we do some recorded live shows like Nintendo Power Block, Crossroads, Arsenal X, and the Boss Rush podcast. And we have other stuff like 1v1, standard definition, recap, and other shows that will be coming soon. And could check our old content like Pot and Pay, Master Indie Class, and some of our E3 coverage from past years. We did predictions, but on our personal shows, we just talked about some of the stuff that they were shown. So we didn't really have an E3 this year, but next year we will definitely be having one. But that, everybody, have a great week. Have a great weekend. Get you a controller, some good old snacks, and take a walk so that we could talk. With that, everybody, we will see you next time on Talk the Walk. And also, one more thing before we go. I'm sorry, I apologize, everybody. As long as we are playing Soma for Talk the Walk, we also are doing Resident Evil 2 for the Boss Rush Book Club. So you guys could go in and play that. Also, we are getting ready for our Mass Effect discussion that will be happening in October. So do play Mass Effect 1 to 3. And if you feel like playing Andromeda, you can. We are going to be doing a history of Mass Effect. We got some great guests that's going to be on the panel. So literally be ready for that. We're going to have a lot going on in October, so just be ready for a lot of great gaming. And with that, everybody, we will see you next time on Talk the Walk. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys. Bye.